Is food allowed here? Is that okay?
As long as it was purchased with Bitcoin. Did you buy it with Bitcoin?
Sorry. No. Bought it with IDR from, and I got charged a lot of money to get that IDR out of my ATM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. We're like T-minus 1 minute, folks.
I'm actually leaving a half hour place. Don't take that personally.
Okay.
I didn't get the notification.
We already locked the door, so sorry about that.
Huh?
It's actually
It's too expensive for people. You're doing it
yeah.
live as well? Like,
Oh yeah, we're live and in person.
yeah, but then online as well?
Yeah. Yep.
Podcast, right?
Via Google Hangouts.
Yeah.
Wait,
All right.
podcast.
Seems to be the.
Well, you can feed the YouTube version. It goes right up on YouTube afterward.
Yeah, it's good.
What's that? Oh, we don't know. It's open to anybody.
You get some remote view?
We do. We do indeed. All right, guys. Let's kick things off. Welcome, everybody. It's Tuesday night, 6/2015, 5 p.m. local time here in Bali. Time for the filter. This is filter number 61. We got a good show lined up. Have you guys looked at the price lately? It's up. Price is up. Very exciting. And the volatility is down. Take a look at that. And even more exciting than that, all the ATMs in Ubud are not working. So yeah, that makes things a little interesting around here. We're going to take a look at all that. We're also going to talk about some words maybe you've never heard of. Have you guys heard of the word ZERP or the word NERP? ZERP and NERP? Yeah, okay. We're going to talk about ZERP and NERP together. We got a few, last week we talked about use cases. We got a few use cases that straggled in after the wire last week that we'll talk about. We're going to talk about prediction markets. Have you heard of prediction markets? Oh, this is very exciting. And last but not least, the name of the show is the Bitcoin Big Bang. 7 years ago, right around this time, Mr. Satoshi Nakamoto was busy hatching his plan for Bitcoin. And we're going to talk a little bit about just how that went down. Hopefully we'll have time for all that stuff. Let's kick it off. I'll go ahead and screen with all the lovely people at home. And they should now be seeing what we're seeing up there. Is that in focus, guys? Better, worse, better, worse? Okay. All right. All right. The filter number 63. Let's kick it off here. So we are coming to you live from Hubud. Hubud is the #1 co-working space in all of Ubud, Bali. They've got very good internet connection and a very nice air-conditioned room for us to have our filter meeting every week. We really appreciate them giving us the high internet and air conditioning for our meeting tonight. Thank you, Hubud. What are we up to? Well, what we're trying to do here in Ubud is build a Bitcoin economy, right? We're trying to collaborate so that Bitcoin works in this little town. We do that in a few different ways. We get together in person every Tuesday night, but when we're not together in person, we hang out in this Bitcoins in Bali Facebook group. So if you find anything that is on the web that's pertinent to what we talk about here, please post it online. All these stories we end up talking about when we get together in person or when we bump into each other in the hallway at Hubud. So if you find something good, put it up here and let's talk about it. We also have a little conversation going on Twitter. If you go to hashtag Bitcoins in Bali, you can interact with us there. If you want to discuss any of the topics we talk about during the show, or if you've got something germane to discuss via Twitter, just tack on that Bitcoins in Bali hashtag and we'll kick around the idea. All right, let's take a look at the price. Like I said, the price is very exciting this week. I think we're up from last week. We were at like 238, 239, and now we're up at 241 US dollars. But of course, we're in Indonesia right now. And in Indonesia, it is 3,292,000 Indonesian rupiah for one Bitcoin. This is the Indonesian exchange, bitcoin.co.id. Another interesting thing here is that in the last 24 hours, they traded 758 Bitcoins. They're usually around 150, around 200 Bitcoins per day. So this is wildly more than we usually see. So there's some kind of market making going on right here in Indonesia. That's good news for the Bitcoin exchange, because every time somebody trades a Bitcoin, these guys make a little bit of money. And presumably it's because the price has been moving. You know, if there are day traders and speculators trying to take advantage of arbitrage opportunities, well, maybe they're moving Bitcoins from market to market in and out of Indonesia. Not exactly sure, but this is definitely anomalous. Over 700 Bitcoins in the last 24 hours. Let's take a look at the US price, $241 per Bitcoin, according to CoinDesk here. Take a look at some of the other numbers. Now, for those of you who are new to Bitcoin, Bitcoin is a kind of a different kind of money. It works a lot like money, and it's easy to think of it like if the internet was a country, then Bitcoin is the money. But it's a little bit different in the way that it works. It's an open ledger. So it's everybody at all times can see exactly how many Bitcoins exist and exactly what's going on with the Bitcoin global economy. You can see that the total number of Bitcoins is exactly 14,691,725. Right? That's the exact number of Bitcoins. With other money, like the US dollar, for example, we don't know exactly how many US dollars there are. Nobody really knows that figure. And of course, the price of everything that you think of in dollars is related to the number of dollars that exist. So it's kind of interesting to me that the whole world relies on valuing things versus the dollar, but we don't know exactly how many dollars exist. It's kind of funny when you think about it. Bitcoin's a little different. So let's take a look at Bitcoin transactions. As you can see, over the last 2 years or so, the number of Bitcoin transactions has been going up and up and up. There's been a lot of movement around the price. The price went all the way up to $1,200 US dollars per Bitcoin, and now we're back down at 240 as we just saw. But you can see as time goes by, more and more people are performing Bitcoin transactions. Many of those take place right here in Ubud, Bali. I think this is when we started when we started having the filter meetings, and then this is like obviously a direct correlation here between our activity here in Ubud and the global Bitcoin economy. What else can we look at? Okay, because Bitcoin is an open ledger, and we can see in real time people spending their Bitcoin. And this is actually not showing up quite right. But you can see things changing over here. This is a real-time view of the Bitcoin transactions that are hitting the network, right? So in real time, we can see things happening. Let's see if the next one will show up. Here's another view. Every time there's a Bitcoin transaction, the whole world can see it. They can't see who's trading Bitcoin, but because it's money that works in a different way, in a public way, in a transparent way, we can like hover over this transaction. This was for this big bubble right here was for, if you look on the left there, 595 Bitcoins. The circumference of each of these circles represents a transaction, based inside my browser in this web page. These are all the transactions that have taken place. So when I took a look earlier today, over the last 24 hours, there's about 1.5 Bitcoin transactions per second, right? So we've come a long way in the last 7 years. We've also got Bitcoin volatility. This may look like kind of a boring number. We talk about a lot of numbers in this little get-together of ours, but this is actually a very exciting number, 1.3. This is the volatility that the last 30 days, Bitcoin has only changed a little over 1%. We're starting to approach, at least sometimes, the volatility that we see in major currencies. That's partly due to Bitcoin kind of growing up a little bit, and partly due to the international Forex markets going crazy, and things like the ruble losing 60% of its value in 3 days, and the Swiss franc decoupling from the euro and wildly swinging by 2 or 3% in a day. But in any case, if Bitcoin succeeds, then this volatility number will go down, and that's why we look at it every week. It's as low as it's ever been. Thomas?
Is there a hard limit to the number of Bitcoins that will be released or slowing over time, and there's no upper bound?
Yep. Bitcoin is based on open source software. All the rules are there for everyone to see. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins, but that's about 100 years from now.
Okay.
So the interesting thing about that is the inflation rate is known. So between now and the last day that a Bitcoin is made, we know the rate at which the Bitcoins grow. So, in terms of, if Bitcoin ever becomes a viable currency, it'll be very predictable in terms of inflation. It'll probably be basically non-detectable by individual people, that the inflation rate once.
But it does get harder to discover one over time, right? Like the way it was written, it was easier to mine them in the beginning, and then it gets more difficult.
Yep, the inflation rate cuts in half every 4 years. Actually, next year, well, every 10 minutes, there's about 25 new Bitcoins born. Where's my metrics here? You can see in the, let's see, the average blocks per hour is 6. So every 10 minutes, there's 25 new Bitcoins. So let's see. What am I looking at here? Well, there's the total number of Bitcoins. Here are block rewards. So 25 Bitcoins every 10 minutes. So about $6,000 worth of Bitcoin every 10 minutes. And next year, this 25 will be cut into 12. So every 10 minutes, there will only be 12 and a half. And in another 4 years, it'll be cut in half again.
And that's regardless of the number of miners that are in the system?
That's regardless of the number of miners. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
If the market demand grows faster than supply, what would happen?
That means the Bitcoins become more valuable.
So more Bitcoins will be born.
If there's more demand, the supply will stay the same or grow at the same rate, no matter how much demand there is.
So the number of blockchains are not going to grow.
Well, there's a new block every 10 minutes, and that'll happen until like 100 years from now. And so yep, that will not change. But if right now, let's say that there's 1 million people that own Bitcoins. If 5 years from now, 100 million people have it, the demand will go up, so that it should be reflected in the price. Yes.
Is 10% more Bitcoin introduced
I'm not sure. Could be.
so,
Might be something like that.
so if we look at if the Bitcoin price stays stagnant, it's actually going up by 10% per year, but people are introducing 10% more supply.
Right.
So it's staying down. So
Yeah.
Wait, I
Right.
didn't get it.
The-
Price stays $200, but there's more available.
yes. Every 10 minutes.
Technically,
Yeah.
the market cap increases, but the volume stays the same.
Yeah, and
Okay.
what I'm saying is, I think what's happening is if the miners weren't getting their reward, that price would have gone up 10%. So if it's staying stagnant, the value is, the market cap is going up. Yeah.
Right. The global economy is absorbing $6,000 every 10 minutes. If the price stays the same, then
So if come next year when the house goes to 5%, there should be a 5% upward pressure.
Well, I think that's when the price went from 200 to 1,000 when it helped, right?
it was around that time.
Yeah.
And part of that was just nobody really knew if the halving was going to work, I think. Or was that the second halving, the last one we had? I can't remember.
When it went to 200 to 1,000, that was pretty much a scam.
Well, it was,
Illegal, right?
yeah, there was that business that was going on in Mount Gox. But it was also coincident with the U.S. Senate hearings. Because I remember I was sitting there watching with my popcorn, watching the senators talk about Bitcoin. It was very exciting for me. It's kind of like the Super Bowl. And I was watching the price climb because they were being so dovish about, we thought they were maybe going to like stamp it out or, make it illegal. So yeah, I was watching the price climb as they were, kind of being nice to Bitcoin on the Senate floor. So
Were you buying?
I was not buying.
It was going up like $100.
Anyway, we need another one of those days. Nothing has been. Yeah, we're due for another climb. All right, where were we? Okay. All right, so let's get into like some of the messiness that's been going on locally around ATMs. Has anybody in the room had a problem with an ATM recently? All right, we got like maybe half the people in the room. And were you guys trying to access foreign bank accounts? Is that what was happening? No, you were.
My problem is me.
I find it helps.
Leaving my card in the machine because back home.
Will, we've talked about this. I find it helps if you actually have money in your account. Like makes it more likely to. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. No. What's been going on, at least as far as I can tell, and what you see here is somebody's very poor photography job taking a picture behind a window. But what that sign says is that we apologize for any inconvenience. As of October 1st, we cannot accept withdrawal and balance inquiries for international Visa debit or domestic Visa. So something wrong with the Visa network. It's my understanding that there's been a rash of ATM fraud in the area. So ATM skimming is what's been going on. And actually, I'm gonna share with you. Well, let's cut over. This is Yujin Du, who's a Hubudian around the world doing a documentary about being a digital nomad. But she wrote all the way back in May 25th about how she lost $4,000 out of her account, out of her Korean bank account because of someone skimming ATM cards here in Bali. So this is not a new phenomenon, but what is new is them shutting down the network because it's been happening so much. So I heard lots of anecdotal reports of people actually losing, or basically their accounts being emptied, or people having problems with money disappearing from their accounts. And then subsequent to that, we've seen them just simply shut down the Visa networks, presumably because Visa has probably very strict rules for being a part of the Visa global network. And I would presume that the local ATM owners are needing to make up for this money that has disappeared from their ATMs. So rather than fix the problem, or maybe until they fix the problem, they've just turned them off.
Is this problem happening in other countries?
Yes.
Okay, so
I don't think it's
not to do with this.
I think it's got more to do with magnetic chip transfer.
Yeah. So there's been this thing cooking for about a year to do with card security and sort of the chips and so forth. And it seems like the Indonesian ATMs or Indonesian run ATMs have just not, that they haven't taken that lead time to prepare and suddenly
Oh.
yeah, it's uncommon.
But I think that security thing is
It's the security.
only for American cards.
The Visa is American based, and
Yeah, but
Visa has I mean, Australia you get a
yeah,
UK you get a Visa based card.
But I think America's way behind in terms of technology around banking transfers and also credit card security. Like, they still use magnetic strip. Australia, it's all out there.
Chip and pin.
yeah,
I
but
think there's something like, I think the fraud's involved in it because there's a lot of fraud happening in the magnetic strip. That's where all this scheme happens.
Mhm.
And they're trying to push the change to this chip, but no one's ready for it.
I don't think the Indonesian banks are being proactive um, because they don't have to be. Because mostly the cards that are in the scheme are foreign-based cards, and then the problem is then with the home bank, Australia, UK, whatever.
Okay, but don't the ATMs need to be of some standard where in order to participate in these global networks so that they're yeah.
But yeah, so this is the crunch time. This is part of the crunch.
Well, you know,
Are you saying that like these ATMs got skimmed? It's the issue of the Indonesian banks to secure them. And because the Visa network wants the local Indonesian banks to reimburse stolen funds, that Visa shutting down transactions to these ATMs.
is it?
that what you're saying?
Well, I would. I mean, I don't really know. I mean, I was talking to someone that inquired, and the bank wouldn't tell them what the story was or when they would be turned on again. Imagine that. Yes, they weren't forthcoming. But yeah, so it's speculation on my part. But is everybody able to pay their rent and eat? Does anyone need any support now that they're yeah? All right, at least
So
one.
my card just got
At least.
$4,000, and I got a new one sent to me in Singapore. And I could use ATM to Singapore, no problem. And the night I arrived back here, it didn't work. I've been trying all these different.
Really?
So I'm gonna go to a bank tomorrow and hope that I can deactivate.
Yeah, there was somebody posted on, I think it was on the thread. There's some place where you can go if you've got a Visa MasterCard, they can turn it into money, probably for a fee, I would imagine. And,
You can always do that. Just go to the bank, right?
yeah.
Go to the desk.
Okay.
Yeah, you can so in the alley behind the men.
Yes, yes, uh-huh. Yeah, lickety split. Please, nobody starve to death. If you're having trouble, yes, we'll set you up with Bitcoin and you'll be all set to go.
It's got to be a massive issue going through the center. All the tourists landing with no cash.
Yeah, I don't know what.
I don't know. I actually noticed that it's mostly the ATMs by the supermarket and then the local banks. But then if you try Commonwealth Bank, OCBC, or what was the other one? I tried 3 of them actually. Yeah, it worked.
I went into the ATM in the Commonwealth branch and it wouldn't work. So if they went in yesterday and the whole ATM shut itself and shut down.
Right, so
But then I went
Commonwealth.
to the Commonwealth Bank here in Coco, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got absolutely no
I
idea.
think it's local banks.
Well, yeah, interesting. Well, you know, it's when you think about it, credit cards. When you think about credit cards in the context of Bitcoin, it's like your private key is your 4-digit PIN, right? You know, Bitcoin has like a private key that's I don't know, is it 37 characters? Does anyone remember? Longer than 4? I think it's longer than 4 digits. But yeah, your public key is the number on the front, and your private key is a 4-digit PIN, and obviously 4 digits is easy to crack. So anyway.
There's one buy Bitcoin.
Well, funny you should ask. You're in the right place. Well, we have a Bitcoin 101 class, which has yet to be scheduled, but will probably be very soon. So stay tuned for that. And there's also a Bitcoin machine outside, Bitcoin vending machine, which is operational. No malfunctioning Bitcoin ATMs in all of Ubud.
Do you need cash or something? Do you?
You need yeah, it changes rupiah bills into Bitcoin. Yeah.
You gotta solve that.
It's a puzzle.
It doesn't change Bitcoin to Rupiah.
You're Canadian.
It does not, although you can do that at the front desk.
Okay.
At Hubud, yeah.
You send me money.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's so to know the ATM from.
that is, yeah.
I used that one. I lost my card.
Oh, yeah.
That was my lifeline.
Hey, welcome, guys. Come on in.
And what happened?
Make yourself at
Buying
home.
bitcoins and turning them into cash here
So it's still here though, right?
from desk here.
It's the limit, right?
Yep, daily limit, 1 mil.
Alright.
Better than nothing. When I was doing a little research, I found this. Speaking of ATMs, I think this was published today in HuffPost. ATM fees have never been higher. So what's interesting about this is, well, and I think this is happening across all banks and banking relationships, is they're trying to find more and more ways to charge their customers. Have you guys experienced this? Have you? Anybody can report anecdotally this to be kind of sweating them for more and more stuff lately?
That's why I got into
Could
Bitcoin.
be talk for wrestling.
I know I always read those like banking agreements, you know, the ones that are like 10 pages of legalese to see what they have the right to charge me for. But even I miss something here and there. I noticed that my bank started charging me an international transaction fee recently, where every time I use my card, it charges me, I think, 1%. So that's kind of a bummer. And these are fees. And by the way, you know, I'm kind of an old guy. I'm probably older than most of you guys in the room. But when they first introduced ATMs, they were all free. They were all absolutely free for like at least 2 or 3 years, because before that you had to actually go to the bank and see a teller. Like ATM stand for automatic teller machine, because they replaced actual people. I'm old. I'm very old. Yes, I used to wait in line at the bank. That's how old I am.
I used to be a teller.
Oh, really?
Very
But so now we're, you know, in Atlanta, over $5 per visit to the ATM, and I've seen fees like $10, $14. These are just averages. It's pretty crazy. I especially hear from people from Australia in Bali paying like $8 per transaction, and the ATMs will only allow them to get 2 million per transaction. So if they want to get like $300 or $400 out to pay their rent, they're paying like $20, $30 in fees. It's kind of nuts.
Is there an over-the-counter fee?
Well, I mean, if you walk up to a machine and you use your card, these are off-network averages. So if you walk up to a bank that's not your own and transact, then you get
Usually
charged
they
a fee.
charge you a fee on the machine, and your bank charges you in addition after that. You get kind of full.
Yeah. What I was saying is, what if you just walk into a bank and you threw money?
No, there's no fees for that.
Really? There's more late.
Well, there isn't one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a
If you go to
machine,
bank
so
that's
there's
not
no
your
labor
bank,
involved.
then
Yeah.
it's still charged.
It's mainly for out-of-network machines, the ones that are just kind of all over the place. They charge you more. If you go to their own ATM, they don't charge you.
Is it more profitable now because of these fees, or is it just looking up for the fees they can't charge?
That's a great question. Yes, why are all these fees going up? Well, let's take a look at this first. This right here, this red line, is the federal funds rate, which is what all interest rates are related to. And since the global financial crisis, you can see it's been zero or near zero for years and years on end now, right? So this is what's referred to as zero interest rate policy, or ZIRP. ZIRP, that's one of our words of the day. And because of that, banks are making less money when they loan money out. So we're now we're literally scraping bottom for the banks, and the banks are looking for more ways to make money than simply do a fractional reserve loan and make a decent interest rate.
You're also limited on the interchange that you charge to merchants as well.
Yeah, in some jurisdictions, those are limited, and you know, so what's happening is we've been at zero interest rate since 2008, and what they're trying to do now is NIRP, negative interest rate policy. And when you think about it, how could you possibly have a negative interest rate? Well, it happens because of these fees. Like all these fees that they're able to charge us, you're actually paying them money to give them money, which is a little bit crazy when you think about it. But this is actually coincident with a kind of a war on cash, because obviously the last bastion for the consumer or the end user is to actually pull their cash out of the system and stick it in a mattress, because presumably, or actually in a negative interest rate situation, that's less costly than keeping it in the bank.
Only if you don't factor in risk. If your money's in a bank account, it's insured up to
That's right.
100,000.
If you're
It's in your mattress.
right, and the maid cleans under there.
Yeah, so the other theory about why negative interest rates work is you have to price and risk. So you can probably, I think we've seen like -1.5% or something, which takes that sort of thing into account. Well, storing money is costly.
Right.
And not just costly in the sense of needing security guards and bolts and that sort of thing, but costly in pricing and the risk of losing it.
Right.
You usually don't.
Yeah.
The natural stuff.
Well,
Take it into account.
what's interesting about this whole thing is we have have you ever heard the expression, it's an American expression, happy as a clam? Right? Well, the whole expression is happy as a clam at high tide, because when the tide goes out, the clams are all exposed to the air and they're not happy at all, right? And what we see here is the tide is out, so you can start to see how much money it costs banks to actually maintain all these accounts, right? Because they're no longer making money, as much money as they need by loaning it out, so they've got to actually figure out a way to charge people something that they think they've been getting for free forever. I mean, you used to open up a checking account and get a free toaster in the States, or something free, and you're like, wow, this is crazy. You know, I can just give them my money, and they give me a little bit of interest every month, and I get a free toaster. I'm sure there's nothing funny going on. This must be a good deal for me and not for them. But now that the funds rate has been at zero for years and years now, they haven't raised rates since 2006. This is the last time they it's been downhill and flat. Since, let's see, when is that? 2000, yeah, Q4, 2006, 2007. So that's a long time, right? And you can think about it for a second. Like, think of all the lost revenue. Maybe your grandmother was saving her whole life and she's got a little nest egg. She's been making artificially low interest for, she probably died in here somewhere. Yeah, she's like not making money on her money, and neither is anybody else, artificially for years and years on end. And now they want to take this red line and take it like down here somewhere. They probably have to like write some new graphing software to even represent it. But that's what's crazy. You can see how low can you go. This is from the St. Louis Fed. This is from the Fed itself. Negative interest rates and investors' flight to safety. Let's see here. Negative interest rates fascinate both professional economists and the public. Conventional wisdom is that interest rates earned on investments are never less than zero, because investors could alternatively hold currency. Yet currency is not costless. Thank you, Sydney. You were making that same point. It is subject to theft, physical destruction. It's expensive to safeguard in large amounts. It's difficult to use for large and remote transactions, especially when your bank is like asking you questions about why are you doing this transaction. No, you can't have more than $10,000, etc. Yes, we have to file a suspicious activity report because you're pulling all this money out of the bank, etc., etc. But they're talking about this. I mean, think about if you earn your money and your money is not only disappearing because of inflation, but it's disappearing because your bank is taking it away from you. Now, there's actually some people that think this is a good thing. They call it demurrage. It's if your bank account is dwindling, what does it incentivize you to do? Right. And that's the whole reason. That's the whole reason that they had it at zero in the first place, because they're discouraging saving, right? They're saying don't save your money, go spend it. Like we want to get the economy moving.
This is an important point though, because there is a relationship between inflation and unemployment, and they are in tension with each other. And unemployed people, there's many problems, there's many reasons why you don't want people unemployed, and one of them is they're not spending money, they're not stimulating the economy. And that's the other explanation for the safe harbor thing. I mean, people want to invest, but factories and big companies, nobody's buying their stuff. So why would you build another factory when that factory you already have is idle half the time?
Right. Right. And the global economy is by lots of measures slowing down, and we're starting to see the impotence of central planning. You know, the Federal Reserve is tasked with those two metrics that you mentioned, lowering the unemployment rate and keeping inflation right around 2%, neither of which they've been able to do since they've basically maxed out their two mechanisms for doing that. That is, increase the money supply, which this is the other thing on this graph. We've quadrupled the money supply since 2008 and held the interest rates at 0. And you know, we didn't really talk about that, but last month the Federal Reserve Open Market Committee met and yet again did not raise interest rates, not even a quarter of a point. So
By money supply, you mean printing money?
Printing money. This is the U.S. money supply since the global financial crisis. It's been, the supply's been quadrupled. This is just base money, though. This is
Profits are all-time high. So
nominally, meaning by the numbers. But who knows what the reality is, because there's 4 times as much money in the system.
So why is the USD going up then?
Well, because it's like what was the analogy that we used? It's the cleanest dirty shirt in the laundry. The QE has stopped in the U.S.
Yeah.
But then they handed off to Europe, and they've been printing, I think, 60 trillion euros every month.
Like, I thought that's intertwined with interest rates rising in America, and therefore the dollar went up, right?
No, there was speculation that they were going to raise at the last quarterly meeting, which was last month.
Right.
It was on the 17th of September. That was when the world was going to end because of the Shemitah, but it didn't.
But it had a big effect on my area. A lot of people started going back
The Shemitah or the Open Market Committee meeting? Okay, but they did not raise the interest rates. So.
Right.
Okay. All right, moving along. Any other comments, questions on the?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, like, I noticed, like, traveling to different countries, how, like, what is actually the best way to convert currency. Some places actually could be ATMs, but I noticed in Indonesia specifically, the rates that you get for the USD, it's literally almost the same as the daily rate that you would see online. So
Yeah.
I feel like if you want to take the risk, actually, the cheapest thing to do is to bring cash and go to find the best deal in town and exchange.
Yeah, it's actually been quite good. I've
Because
had great
I
luck
think
doing that.
the demand here for USD is pretty high, that they actually are willing to give you the daily rate.
That's right.
Though I've noticed other currencies, they don't give you as good rates, though you could negotiate. So actually I went for the British pound and I said, this is not a daily rate, even though you give me the daily rate in USD, you should match the daily rate.
Really?
Yeah. So it's all negotiable when you go there, and I think it's the cheapest. But it's not the case in other places. Like if I go in England, almost everywhere they charge you 2% change USD to pound.
You negotiated here with the bank.
I negotiated with the currency exchange.
Like
But
smaller tours
yeah,
for
like
that.
exactly. And she literally just piled of money in the pocket. Super.
Wow, pulled it out of her pocket.
Yeah. Well,
And
it comes down to walking around with money after that, right? Like.
Yeah, I don't know how these little shops do it. They tend to have quite a good rate. You know.
I don't know what they're doing. I don't know, but I was really surprised.
There's videos online about what they're doing. They scan.
Like this game's going.
Really? If you don't count your money,
you might be
short-changed?
But it's nice to see that the haggling culture extends all the way into the bank. I thought you could just haggle on like a sarong or a bottle opener. If you know what I mean.
I exchanged money for my rent and I paid the same amount that I did for the rent, so I think I was fine.
All right, nice one. No kidding.
Yeah.
As Sydney was saying, they could like bring $10,000 into the customs and custom agent noticing. I'm pretty sure you won't come through with $10,000.
That's true. Yeah.
Yes. They ask you that question on your paperwork entering the country. Do you have more than 10,000 US dollars in bearer instruments? Which is an interesting question when you've got a USB with Bitcoin private keys on it. Anyway, I digress. All right, moving right along. Bitcoins for sale. Anybody in the market for about 44,000 Bitcoins? The U.S. government is selling the last tranche of Bitcoins that were confiscated from the Silk Road bust. So I think Bitcoins were worth a lot more back then than they are now. So
Percent of the overall circulation is 100%.
that's a good question. Well, the reason that they're doing it in this way, and if you read a little bit down, they're holding an auction. So if you're interested in these Bitcoins, you have to send an email to the Justice Department and make a bid. Because if this many Bitcoins were to be distributed on the exchange, it would drive the price way down. So they want to get the most the best price for that number of Bitcoins. And so they're doing it in a certain way where it's basically a closed auction. Like you send them an email saying you want to buy. I think they're doing it 2,000 Bitcoins per block, not to be confused with a block on a blockchain. It's inefficient, but it's better than doing it on the open market, because if they tried to do it on the open market, then it would be very tricky to get top dollar for that many Bitcoins at the same time.
Where does that money go?
Well, they probably buy some toilet seats for some aircraft carrier somewhere, I guess. Maybe maybe they need a new extraordinary rendition camp in Syria, or
Not going to be any data collection happening.
yes, they need some more computers at the NSA Data Collection Center in Utah.
They say that usually the money goes in completely different ways so that you don't.
They need this money to bust the next 10 Silk Roads that have popped up in place of the one that they busted. So it's just going right back into the.
So what's the bust? How did you hear about that?
Well, are you familiar with the Silk Road online marketplace?
Nope.
This is a website on the deep web where you can buy absolutely everything for Bitcoins, including illegal drugs. So it's just kind of like eBay. You log on. You have to do a few tricky technical things, but it's not that hard. You can find instructions. And you open up this site. Kind of looks like eBay. You've got people selling just about everything: LSD, cocaine, and they've got like really nice ratings. And people say, "Oh, my cocaine showed up nice and timely." Well, it's I happen to believe that it's good that it exists, because at least people aren't in a back alley with $1,000 like trading for drugs that they have no idea the provenance of. So it's if people do want to buy drugs, which I think it's my personal feeling that anybody can do anything they want, and this was providing them a safe way to do that. But they were busted by the FBI, and they confiscated all these Bitcoins, and now they're setting them free back into the Bitcoin ecosystem.
And the founder got life in prison. He was like 20.
Yeah, like several back-to-back life sentences. I think they really.
What happened to the FBI installing the Bitcoin?
I think he got done over too. I don't know if he's seen as.
He just got fired.
Yeah. One of the FBI agents investigating it decided to divert some of the Bitcoins into his personal account, but there's that whole public ledger thing that I was talking about earlier.
Did they go after any of the vendors on Silk Road? Did they try and track people before they busted it?
Yeah. I think that they. Why do you ask, Johnny?
My former dealer in Montreal got busted. He's going to jail for 18 months. It's like my
And with-
good buddy. I know, right? What the fuck?
Yeah, I think they did bust some of the big traffickers that were on the site as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Yes. Yep. See if your friend's on there. See if maybe he's in the credits.
But people do argue that that site was what made did for them.
Well, yeah, you know,
Because
it was
a massive use case.
arguably Bitcoin wouldn't be what it is today without, which is kind of funny when you think about it. But it proved that it could perform the function of money.
How long did it exist?
Several years. Yep. And incidentally, the first Bitcoin price spike was coincident with the world realizing that they could buy drugs with Bitcoin. It went from like $2 to $26. Yeah. But anyway, so get out your checkbook and send the Department of Justice an email so you can get in on those discount Bitcoins. Okay, like I said, we cover items that are posted by the Bitcoin, the folks on the Bitcoins in Bali Facebook group. Recently, Bitcoin is kind of in the doldrums lately. We've had the Bitcoin civil war, or they've had technical problems, and all the techie people are arguing about how to go forward with certain technical problems in the Bitcoin protocol. The uptake of people actually spending Bitcoin, the Bitcoin economy, is not happening as quickly as people think it should. And this is an article in Technology Review, which is published by MIT, MIT Technology Review, with a kind of a real negative story on the viability of Bitcoin as a payment mechanism. And it's funny that we were just laughing about it being useful on the Silk Road and proving itself as money on the Silk Road. But it seems adoption is not happening quickly enough for at least the people that gave BitPay $30 million.
What are the use cases aside from Silk Road and buying drugs? Is there a compelling use case to use Bitcoin versus alternatives?
Yes. In fact, on last week's get together, we talked a lot about the different use cases. And what's interesting, there's many different things that Bitcoin can do that regular money cannot do. But in most cases, the use cases are appealing to like emerging markets, people who live in countries where currencies are very volatile. You can take, for example, what happened in Greece. Everybody in Greece had a single monetary regime, the euro, and through no fault of their own, at least the individual Greek people, they were subject to capital controls, for example, and meaning that they could not use their own money that was in the banks. Also, businesses in Greece could not send money out of the country, so it was extremely difficult for businesses and.
Well, I get that, but it's a different question I was asking you too. I mean, if you're in Greece, you can't really use Bitcoin to pay somebody because it just hasn't caught on as a payment mechanism,
True.
right? So, the question was, is there a current use case that is clean enough and provides an advantage, right? So people are actually going to start using it versus theoretically talking about it.
Well, a lot of the use cases are dependent on the ubiquity of it, right? So as it becomes more and more uptake, then there's more and more useful uses for the currency. But you can send money without a bank account. That's what the invention of Bitcoin is. So it's money that's censorship resistant and also extremely inexpensive. There's about 2 billion people on planet Earth that don't have bank accounts, and it's because it's not economical for banks to service them as customers. And there are all kinds of economic models that become viable when you can send any amount of money to anybody on Earth for less than a few pennies per transaction. So, but you're right.
The concept makes a ton of sense. Right? You've got any marketplace has got this chicken and egg dilemma, and it's really hard to crack that nut, right?
Yes.
So you can see how at scale this would change the game completely. The question is, how do you inch your way there? And it's all about finding a couple of niches where, the perception issues with, for example, Silk Road and dreams or, dark web, those things don't really help.
Well, the trend is undeniable. If you look here, this is the, for years and years, the number of transactions on the Bitcoin network, it's only going in one direction. In fact, the technical problems that Bitcoin is experiencing are due to where it's a victim of its own popularity. So we're getting there, but it's taking longer. Like, where's our story here? It's taking longer than people thought, right? I mean, people have to change their ideas about money, right? And maybe like the folks in Cyprus back in 2013 that took a 40% haircut, maybe they're very interested in censorship-free money. But if you're living in California, you got a credit card, you're not feeling any kind of financial pain. But if you're a taxi driver in Africa and you're paying 100% interest per day to take a loan to fill up your taxi cab with fuel, then you might be interested in something else. So
is that graph of transaction, is it the volume of transaction or the amount?
It's the volume of transactions. So irrespective of the value of Bitcoin, it's sheer numbers.
Does it take into consideration of people who's trading Bitcoin? Or?
Yeah, it's all of them. Oh, that's true. These are strictly blockchain transactions right here. So there are more than actually exist, but this is what the Bitcoin network itself has been accommodating.
I was just going to say, I reckon, according to the article, I was thinking that it's going to be, payments is going to be last. If you think about use cases, it's all about having the secure ledger and people doing infrastructure. So it's a little bit like that's the comparison, right? Yeah. TCP/IP. And people are registering property on it, and some of those transactions are from that. People are doing sort of remittances. I was listening to someone who was sending money to Africa, and they did it rather than Western Union, they did it through BitPayStuff, which backed onto a mobile payment system, which was
M-Pesa, yeah.
And then that got through to the villager, and that was almost instant, and it was huge. And so there's all of these infrastructures being built on top of the blockchain, and I think in maybe 10, 15 years, it's going to be a lot of uses and a lot of people can build on top of it. And a little bit like what we've got now with all devices connected to Facebook. I think it's only going to be then that maybe payments will start to pop up because of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's
explain the problems they're facing with the 1 megabyte block size capacity thing.
Yeah, well, they made a technical choice when Bitcoin was just getting started to limit make a technical limit of 1 megabyte per block, which it's kind of technical, but what it means in lay terms is that there's a limit of 7 transactions per second. So if the popularity grows such that there's more demand than 7 transactions per second, then you start to run into capacity problems. So that's
7 per block, and then is there a finite number of blocks, or those keep getting released?
No, there's a block comes into existence every 10 minutes, but the size of the block is what's at issue. Right now it's limited to 1 megabyte, but they want to increase it to, well, there's different proposals for increasing the block size, and I think that there's consensus that the block size needs to be increased, but the question is, because Bitcoin there's no head of the snake, there's no Bitcoin company, there's no Bitcoin government, everybody has to agree on the way forward. And that's the more interesting question, not is it going to be 2 megabytes or 8 megabytes, but how do they decide? Because there's billions of dollars at stake.
Isn't there a maintainer that is like a main organization that kind of is the lead maintainer of it?
That's a good question. There are very powerful people, very vocal people. There are strong personalities, but at the end of the day, it's a true democracy, and you vote by which software you run. Right? You decide which software you're going to run, and that's your vote. And
Is there a recognized standard body?
no, but these are the things that they're talking about. They're trying to figure out, you know, let me just pull up the original white paper, right? What did Bitcoin want to do in the first place, right? And what you'll see is that it wanted to have no central authority. Let me just read it to you if you'll just bear with me. A purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. Digital signatures provide part of the solution, but the main benefits are lost if a trusted third party is still required to prevent double spending and other things, right? He's referring to double spending, but it also loses its luster if a trusted third party is required to make a block size decision, right?
But the internet is decentralized too, and there's certain committees that people agree upon. Is it supposed to be more decentralized than that? Even
yes, it aims to be. It aims to be. In fact, they want to use blockchain technology to replace ICANN, which is the internet's version of a decentralized decision-making body, right? They think that they can do it in an even more decentralized way than what's already being done. But easier said than done. We still don't have a consensus on the technical solution that's going to win in that regard. So,
Is there a hard deadline for that?
no. If everybody fails to upgrade, then we'll just approach that 7 transaction per second limit, and the chips will fall where they may. There are certain proposals that have limits, like I think the BIP 101 Bitcoin Improvement Procedure or Proposal 101 says if 75% of the network adopts theirs, then they'll fork and have a new chain. But the Bitcoin Improvement Proposal 100 requires a 90% consensus. So it's yeah, we still don't know how that's all going to end.
It's still a mind is to extend the democracy metaphor in a not all that positive way, but like real democracies, the people with most money still have disproportionate influence in the network. Because it's still possible, I believe, in the Bitcoin protocol it's unlikely that you're going to muster anything other than fractional percentage points of total computing power. That's not unthinkable, certainly not with enough money. Because they say that because you have the problem of defining who's in the network and who's out of the network at any given time. Because there is some sort of consensus, right, about where the longest chain is and this sort of thing when they're deciding to append, that they can't go back. But it's like a real detailed thing in the protocol.
Right.
It's not entirely decentralized, I think. There are some points where I remember reading this in some paper about Bitcoin. I forgot the details.
Yeah, well, you can think about centralization in various ways, right? There's centralization of mining power. So all the computing power that's used to mine Bitcoin, belongs to 2 or 3. The majority belongs to 2 or 3 big mining pools who have a lot of money and big data center capacity, and so there's that kind of centralization. Then you've got the centralization of the main coders. There's 5 coders that have commit capability on the Bitcoin Core GitHub repository.
The rational people can disagree on what kind of centralized authority they would prefer.
Right. Well,
there's arguments to be made that I would still prefer the benevolent, if sometimes incompetent, central regulator to the wild west of shadowy computer corporations incorporated in some jurisdiction I've never heard of.
Well, yeah. Well, the right amount of decentralization is the whole nexus here. Like they're trying to figure out how decentralized we want to be. If it's anarchy, we have these problems. If we're too centralized, then people can be co-opted and that's what's so interesting about it. Like the real interesting discussion is, how are they going to decide? And it's going to be people that decide. It's not just all about the technology. I'll just point out quickly too that Satoshi Nakamoto, this guy who birthed Bitcoin, originally had a 1 CPU, 1 vote philosophy. This is what he put into the white paper. He couldn't foresee what would happen with the hashing capacity, how it would transcend CPU, go to GPU, and then into ASICs, right? Where they're designing chips specifically to mine Bitcoin, right? So that now me with my piddly little CPU, I can't really participate. I don't really have a vote anymore because I'm not able to run a profitable mining operation with my CPU.
Why, you look at Napster, for example, it's purely peer-to-peer, you take off like a rocket. So if you and I were in Greece and we're going to get a 40% haircut on $1,000, what would I have to do to basically send you that in Bitcoin?
Well, there are markets all over the world for currency to Bitcoin and Bitcoin back to currency, including here in Indonesia. And you'd simply need to buy Bitcoin and then basically convert your fiat currency into Bitcoin, and then you can send it anywhere in the world instantly.
Or you can put your cash into the Bitcoin.
Yeah, into the Bitcoin machine.
And you would convert it into.
Or you can, try and get someone to pay your salary in Bitcoin. Yeah, it's the interface between the old system and the new system that's so painful. In fact, last week we talked about a story that Radiolab did about these people that are extorting people for Bitcoin. They're through malware installing CryptoLocker on people's PCs, and then they have to pay a Bitcoin ransom in order to unlock their computer. And they're trying, like, these are just normal people trying to get their hands on Bitcoin for the first time, and they're like, oh my God, you need a QRC code, and I had to give them my passport, and they're like complaining about how difficult it is. But the reason it's difficult is because of well, US and global know your customer regulations that require anti-money laundering protocols.
That's why I think the places where there's so much pain to basically the status quo, like a 40% haircut, that should be, I guess, the early adopted, right? Because nobody in America that doesn't have that level of pain is going to deal with trying to figure this all out.
That's why I'm sitting in Indonesia, man. I mean, it really is more interesting in places where they're more likely to encounter problems. I mean, it's very popular in Argentina, for example, because they've been dealing with currency crises their whole life. So they get it immediately, and when you talk to somebody in California, they're like, well, I already have PayPal, man. Why do I need Bitcoin? Bitcoin's like a hassle. It's like there's like 10 extra steps for the person in California, but they haven't experienced things like hyperinflation in Zimbabwe. Right. Yeah, the crossing the chasm metaphor.
What's the sort of current thinking about? Because a lot of Bitcoin enthusiasts seem to think that Bitcoin is somehow inflation resistant, and I think at present that's probably true, because it is pegged in various ways to fiat currencies. But why wouldn't Bitcoin be subject to inflation if an entire economy ran?
Well, it depends on how you measure inflation. Are you talking about the actual supply inflating, or the things that are priced in Bitcoin?
Well, I mean, that's always the thing now. I mean, I couldn't give a flying F about how many units of currency anymore. I mean, I care about, if I can buy a beer for 2 Bitcoins today, can I still buy a beer for 2 Bitcoins next week?
But those two things are related.
Oh, sure, they're sure, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
But why? That I mean, the value of currency can change for reasons other than the money supply.
Right, and they should change for those other reasons versus the supply, I would argue.
But that's generally the argument. I mean, I'm just curious if that's the argument, that they don't want its resistance to central regulators determined using that lever.
Yes, they want to take the lever away from central planning and just put it on a trajectory, like make it a force of nature, and then all other variables, which are variables in the real world, relate to this other thing that's fixed.
But a lot of people do talk about inflation as if it's a horrible thing. But I mean, to go back to the granny you mentioned, the poor granny whose money becomes less, if the poor granny has a gigantic mortgage, she's also worse off. Maybe not in the sense that her savings have diminished, but certainly that her equity has lost value or hasn't been deflated away. So I mean, inflation is universally a bad thing.
Yeah, which is why I think some things should be held as stable as possible, and you let the other things fluctuate vis-a-vis something that has kind of some rules.
Say the democratic community shouldn't it be up to a collective decision to decide which priorities the community thinks is more important or not? If you think, say, stimulating demand is something that the community needs, that's something that's very hard to do on the Bitcoin system, but easier to do on the cryptocurrency system.
Yeah, I don't think that's something that a decision that can be made for a large population of people.
Well, that's you certainly see that in Europe and in the US too.
Yeah, it's I mean there's smart people can disagree on the efficacy of central planning, but the Bitcoin experiment is saying let's take away some of those levers of control and see if the other variables can change in relation to that fixed thing and self-correct based on market forces. But all right, guys, I'm afraid we're out of time. Yeah, this was a lively discussion. I think it was a good show. Like I said, we have an ongoing conversation on our Bitcoins in Bali group. If you're not a member yet, get on there and post some stuff. And yeah, we do this every Tuesday night at 5 o'clock. If I know you guys are here in Bali, but those listening online, if you find yourself in Bali, please come join us in person and get involved with everything we're trying to do here. Thanks for coming tonight, guys, and we'll see you next week. All right.